guessing nobody looked at it, but here it is again. So we're on week 4. The quiz is on the tab for week 4. It opens up. I adjusted the time that it opened. Now it's going to be open during class, so from 9:30 till 10:45 on Thursday. Here's the review materials. So what I did was I went through all the PowerPoints, and wherever there is information that we should know about, I highlighted it in red. And it's on a little video, so it kind of flashes 5 seconds on each of them, so you can, boy, if you know what's on these slides, I think you'll do pretty well. We're also going to review some more material. For those of you who like the way we've been doing Kahoots, we'll do Kahoot for Chapter 3, which is on television history, sort of mid-class today. But if you want to go back and use the Kahoots for your review, and plenty of the questions that are in the quiz, there's 25 questions in the quiz. On these Kahoots, there's about, I don't know, 40 questions. So you could play these if you like. So there's a link here which would lead you directly into the Kahoot that you can play if you have their app. And there's also the pin. If you navigate to Kahoot and enter the pin number, you can get into playing it. So they call this a challenge. So, these are open until Thursday at 9 a.m. I had to pick either 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., and I can't leave them open while you're doing the quiz exactly. So these will be open till Thursday 9 a.m. if you want to study with these. And I can't guarantee that there's a one-to-one correlation. For instance, that the answer to any Kahoot question that you were wondering about is going to be, in these slides, but there's a big overlap. And of course, the Kahoots will, it'll show you if you get true or false, if you get it wrong or right and such. So this should be good, I think, for you guys. So the quiz is worth a total of 25 points. Let's check that, make sure. I might have adjusted it since the last time I taught. So the quiz is worth 25 points out of a total of 500 for your grade. So any questions about it? And we will be reviewing today after we finish up very.
Is there no vocabulary?
Pardon me? Vocabulary, you would use the slides that are up there. I use the words that are in the textbook, and they're on the slides. Yeah. A quiz on the vocabulary? Well, sometimes for instance, there could be a question about something like, a vocabulary term that we'll look at in just a second. So that's why I have it off the top of my head. But like convergence, So convergence is a term. It's like a vocabulary term used in media studies. It talks about how, for instance, in your phone, audio, video, text, web, everything converges in your phone. So there's these different media types, and they all come together in your phone. So they converge, Another way you would hear that term is lately media companies buy each other up, right? Like Comcast, the cable company, bought NBC Universal, the television production studio, which owns a big back catalog of television shows and stuff, because Comcast wants to have the exclusive rights to those old television shows. So that's another way that convergence is happening. Disney is buying most of the production assets of Fox. The only thing that will be left will be like Fox News and a few things, but otherwise 20th Century Fox, all the Fox assets are being bought up by Disney, also because they want to stream. So that would be another example of convergences where the businesses that make media are converging, coming together. So that's what convergence means, right? So there'd be, a question about, is this an example of convergence? So yes or no, that kind of thing. So there's some of that. Right, okay. Other questions? That was a good question.
Is there gonna be short answers?
Yeah, they're all multiple choice or true false. You don't have to write short answers. Multiple choice or true false. I don't want to take too much more time before we get into the topic of the day, right? And so we had taken the history of television close to its current state. I'm just looking on the modules. Probably I'll draw your attention to this again after we finish the quiz. So once we do the quiz, we'll do the quiz at 9:30, and then after we finish the quiz, we will continue on with content. However, big industry news this weekend was that Les Moonves, who was the, I guess, CEO, I should know exactly what his title is at CBS, but there's an article up here, 20 years at CBS, an article from a few years ago at Vulture. So he was, of the current generation of network bosses, he was by far the most successful, CBS being usually the #1 network. Sex scandals have forced him out at CBS. He resigned over the weekend, and he had been under, investigation internally by CBS for weeks, if not months, based on previous misconduct. But there was a new wave of allegations, I guess. But I'm sure they were journalistically reported. There's something behind those. Came out on the weekend, and he stepped down. So already that would be a kind of a scandalous story. But behind that is an additional context or factor, which is that CBS and Viacom are both owned by the same parent company. Viacom is a huge owner of cable channels. So Viacom owns BET, MTV, and literally dozens more cable television channels. And but that business is not doing too well as cable subscriptions decline. A lot of the losers in that game are the small cable channels that really have nowhere to go. CBS has been on top of the network business. Over at the parent company, the owner of the parent company, well, it's a publicly traded company, but controlled by the Redstone family. There's this old dinosaur named Sumner Redstone in his 90s who ran those two companies. More scandals, sorry. But so he was deemed incompetent to run his affairs, and his daughter took over the company. She wanted to get rid of Les Moonves at CBS because he was fighting the reintegration of Viacom and CBS together. So he lost that battle, and some people feel that many of the troubles that have surfaced around his sexual harassment misconduct have been pushed to the forefront by Redstone sympathizers who want to get rid of him. So it's a real, it's been a soap opera for the last few years at that company. So we could come back to it, but if you're at all interested in that type of big business soap opera, there's good background there. All right, anyhow. Didn't realize that was going to be such a complex story to tell when I started it. So let's get in here just to finish up a little bit. There's only a few, I believe we left off here last class. And we were in the early 1980s, where cable television was changing in its, influence due to original programming. So prior to the 80s, cable TV had been what we called CATV, community antenna television. It was just a way of getting the old networks with better reception. But in the 80s, it takes off as a business, a production business itself, and starts creating new programs. and competing directly, those new programs compete for audience with the networks, right? When HBO can pull a certain number of viewers away, or Showtime, or you start to get less people watching the networks. So the networks start to lose audience, and there are graphs in the textbook which show you sort of, the kind of constant erosion of the network audience. And that had a couple of consequences, but one of them is that the network power over affiliates got weaker. As the audience declined, it was less and less attractive to be a network affiliate. And remember we said that you used to be able to, it was a great business to be an affiliate because they would write you a check, and CBS would write you a check every month. Now CBS requires of its affiliates that they write a check to the network. So there's been a reverse of network compensation. They used to pay the affiliate. Now the affiliate has to pay the network for things like sports. If the network has to invest literally billions of dollars in an NFL contract for 5 years or something to show the football games, which always rate #1, so that's why it's interesting, but that costs a lot of money. And so the network goes to the affiliate and says, okay, we have to pay a fortune, you have to help us out. So whereas the network in the old days used to pay the affiliate, now the affiliate pays the network. So it's a big change in the network affiliate relationship anyway. Satellites, obviously, the direct-to-consumer satellite has become a competitor to cable. So you can get, Dish TV or some other system where you can get your channels that way if you want. DirecTV, Dish Network. Okay, so those are some direct-to-consumer uses of satellites. So that creates a competitor to cable, which already was a competitor to network television. In 1996, Congress got around to legislating for this new environment. So they did things like tweak the copyright law. They made rules for internet service providers. And all of this was to sort of respond to this new digital reality where, it was really easy to share digital files of music and that kind of stuff, and also there would be a far more competitive landscape in television. So that all needed new rules. We saw a conversion to digital, so your little square analog television became a big, rectangular high-definition TV in 2009. So that required a lot of pre-planning and, basically forcing everybody in the television business to change standards, which was not easy. It was very expensive to do that for them, and so it had to really be imposed. And then to cover the consumer as well. I don't know if you remembered that transition. Boy, you would have been kids at that time, right? But for a while, you could buy a little box which would convert the new television signals so it would still work on your old TV, and they actually gave you money to buy that box just to help, people make the transition and stuff. So not only do you get a better picture, but you can also put multiple channels on one frequency. So I don't know if anyone watches HD TV over the air, but you can get 1, 2, 3, channel 5, sub channel 1, channel 5, sub channel 2, sub channel 3. So all of that, allows you to put more channels onto your frequency allocation. So that can be good, but you have to find programming to put up there. Right, and now we're seeing the emergence of smart TVs. Anyone have a smart TV at home? Okay, all right. So that smart TV is also called OTT, stands for over the top. So over the top, what they mean by that, it's kind of a weird, it's sort of an old school idea, but if you had a television in the old days, you would have a little cable box on the top from the cable company, and all your cable channels would come through this cable box, right? So you'd have 100 channels or something. When they talk about over the top, they talk about things like Roku or Apple TV, and the idea is it goes over the top of that whole system and plugs into your smart TV. So you would connect your smart TV to Wi-Fi or to your network connection over the internet, and you would get all of those channels available through a Roku or some other device that could handle that. So this is why they call it over the top. As bizarre as it seems, it's as though you took a cable and ran it over the top of the old box, the old technology that was there. So now most TVs can receive these over-the-top OTT services, over-the-top services. So that should help you remember what that is. Now people are watching TV in such a different way. I mean, you're watching on different screens, on computer screens, or on your television, which is over the top connected to the internet, or some people still have a cable subscription, and some people like myself cut the cable, and you get, if you want to see network TV, you get it over the air for free, back as it, so it's really changed stuff a great deal. However, people are, the TV business as a whole is adapting to the competition from online video, Netflix and all of those providers, and that is cutting into television as a whole, delivering stuff over the internet, right? Does anyone have like a YouTube subscription with live television on it, or Hulu with live TV? Not yet. Okay, so that's, interestingly enough, now you can now get, let's see, the purpose of cable used to be to get network television, better reception on your TV. Now, over the top, of course, gives us access to all this different programming, but you can also now get CBS, NBC, ABC through your over-the-top connection, which would mean that you can completely wipe out the cable company altogether, except that they usually provide your broadband internet access. So cable television is facing competition from that as well. Goodness me. The other thing to think about is, rather than say, well, the internet is killing old school television, just remember, actually, old school television is still a multi-billion-dollar business, and they use all of the new options. CBS has, as an old school network, it also has a streaming service. They create original programs. There's a new Star Trek on their streaming service. There's a bunch of other programs they create just for CBS All Access, which is the name of their streaming service. They, of course, have CBS.com. It's just a plain old website that's free, and they'll show you episodes of shows on CBS on the internet as well. Rather than thinking about one medium destroying another, think instead about the rebalancing of different media sources and the way that certain brands or certain powerful companies will use everything all at once in order to reach the audience in many different ways. Disney still owns ABC, but is launching streaming services, to produce their content that way, to distribute their content that way. So it's now a really complex environment. I guess that's certainly fair to say. Yeah. So cable and satellite systems losing to subscribers to streaming and over the top, cutting the cord, and even plenty of young people never were subscribers and never will be. So cable is adapting, but really surviving through providing internet service, right? TV industry as a whole, then we're looking at it, the audience is shifting to, hey, I want to see this show exactly when I want to see it, so I'll stream it through Hulu or I'll stream it through Netflix, wherever. I'll find some online place where I can stream it instead of actually watching. So they call that a la carte, which is like when you go in a restaurant, you pick what you want to eat off the menu instead of taking, you know, the special, which is like 5 courses. And so that's the idea that in the old cable model, you had to take their bundle of like 30 channels and pay $80 a month for it. But now the audience prefers a service where they can pick and choose what they want. So that's important. So over the top is the latest competitor, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime too, right? And then cord cutting, people who just avoid cable altogether and will go with a streaming service and take it on their phone or their television, their computer or something like that. Meanwhile, computers are getting better. Ultra high definition video and televisions are out there, all right? And some video display technology is better. You know, gives you a higher contrast picture, looks better, costs more. So televisions are looking a little better. What is the outlook for broadcast television? Well, we know for sure that their audience is going to decline and continues to. Their profitability so far has not declined as fast as the audience. So in other words, even if less people are watching, they've managed to raise the advertising prices so they still stay more and more profitable, even though less people are watching. My goodness. They continue to be relevant for big live events, you know, game shows or reality TV show finals or Oscars or Super Bowls. Nobody can rival the networks for being able to have 30 million people watching at once. That's still something they can provide that really nobody else can right now. They all tend to be parts of, you know, as we mentioned, CBS Interactive Streaming, CBS Network. CBS is owned by the same company that has Simon & Schuster Publishers. So someone will write a book and they'll be interviewed on a CBS show about the book. And then, you know, parts of the book will be excerpted and given away on all the websites that they control and stuff. So that means that, you know, they control so much media, they can push content through all of their vertically integrated channels, you know. Local broadcasters are still really important because, you know, they're in touch with local audiences and provide unique content to local audiences. So that's important. And TV is now, you know, directly competing with streaming services. And in some ways, some of them, CBS is making its own streaming service to try to play both sides of the competition, you know. So the future may be live local news and big sporting events. And I think we're really seeing that now, you know. Old people will still watch the news at 10 o'clock, their local news. And you really can't get that anywhere else, you know. Like Bay Area news is produced here. And they won't be doing it in, you know, New York City or something. And big sporting events is what everyone wants to tune into, you know, which is, you want to see it live. Cable TV, what's happening? Oh, that's another business that's slowly in decline, fighting the cutting the cord, people who are leaving to go to streaming services. Cable nevers, those are what we call people who never had cable and never intend to getting it. So those are some of the things that are impacting cable TV. Oh, we don't need to talk about satellite TV, but that's our last slide anyway. In a way, it faces the same problems that cable television does. It's you know, I think the new over-the-top technologies, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Netflix, they give people the interactive choices that they want. It's really hard to, you know, keep justifying systems like satellite TV for now. Although again, there are many kinds of channels that are of interest. You know, there are channels that appear on satellite TV that won't appear anywhere else, like small ethnic, you know, language channels. I mean, I was thinking about my wife's family is in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of Persian language TV in LA, and it's only on satellite television. You can't get it streamed or anything else because that's their technology. So if you're in that market, and of course lots of people are in different communities, then it may still be relevant to you. Cool. Okay. Well, that's the state of things in our current broadcasting. So let's again, we're rushing into stuff, but any questions about all this? No, I'm just jamming it down your throat today. Today's not a big day for discussion. I really preferred last class when we were talking about your media use. But we want to get into, let's see, Kahoot, right? So if you'd like to play along, let's, so what did we call cable television in the early days of cable TV, like when it was first starting out? You guys remember? There was community antenna TV, so CATV. So it's sort of like cable, like the first CA and then TV. So it stands for community antenna. So that's a question that we got to there. All right. And let's see, another thing that we talked about is the compensation, right? Affiliate compensation. So you have the network, and they have affiliate stations. So let's say CBS is an example. And so your affiliates would be, KPIX in San Francisco, KCBS, in New York City, and there'd be a Los Angeles affiliate and such. So, it would be a K something. And it would be WCBS in New York City. So, these affiliates are local stations that sign a contract, right, with all of them. So the affiliates, if you're a local station, the affiliate, you get a lot of money from the network, and your life is in it. But if you're an independent station, not affiliated at all, you don't make much money at all. So let's put this. The affiliates make a lot of money. Independents like Cron here in San Francisco, they don't make as much money as an affiliate station would. Okay, so I think we got a bunch of people logged in. Terrific. So let's play as we start. 10 questions. We are ready. So let's just see. In 1961, who referred to television as a vast wasteland? Oh boy. Well, we didn't get to that one, but this is a good thing to get to now. So, in fact, and we'll give you the answer now. You can all get the answer right if you want. It was Newton Minnow. Newton Minnow. His name sounds like the combination of, I don't know, a minnow's a little fish, right? So, but Newton Minnow was a commissioner on the FCC who famously said that television is a vast wasteland. We need to promote educational television. So Minnow and he's still alive. And I heard him interviewed recently, famous for calling TV a wasteland, meaning that it's all entertainment. There's no knowledge in it. So Newton Minnow is the answer on that one. FM radio had better quality than AM. Broadcasters immediately switched over to FM. Is that true or false? That one we should be able to remember. AM was the original type of radio. And then there was that fellow named Howard Armstrong who invented FM. But did everyone jump on FM, or did it take some time? Okay, and we're counting down to the right answer. So this one you've heard before. Oh, 4 and 4. Well, the answer is that's false. So FM radio was invented about 10 years after AM. But it took about 40 years before FM was really a viable business. Now, why was that? Because even though it was a better technology, David Sarnoff, the head of RCA, held back FM. He wanted people to be ready to buy television sets. So he undermined Howard Armstrong and Armstrong's early business maneuvers to make FM big. Armstrong killed himself in the 1940s over this whole issue, but FM didn't take off until the 60s when popular music became big on FM radio. Who was associated with the invention of TV? So we're looking at these names down here. Was it Philo T. Farnsworth, Frank Lloyd Wright, Benjamin Britten, Walt Disney? Remember the Iowa farm boy who was supposedly plowing rows in his field? Got the idea. Excellent. 3. We got many more people got it right than wrong. So it's Philo T. Farnsworth. He won the patent battle as the inventor of television with the other fellows, Weorkin. Okay, Sarnoff. So we're talking David Sarnoff, president of NBC, thought that radio could make money by becoming something in the home. What did he say it would be? A music box, a newspaper, a telegraph, a babysitter? Boom, okay. Only 2 people got the music box, but that was Sarnoff's idea, was that radio could be a method of putting music into people's homes so that the business would take off that way. So he wrote an essay called The Radio Music Box. Just as with radio, early television was dominated by networks. Is that true or false? Okay. Yes, more people got it right than wrong. I'm always encouraged of that. So that is correct. The radio networks were already in place, and when television came along, it was the same players, CBS, NBC, ABC. Now they had television. So they really were running the business already. So yes, it's true. Television was dominated by networks, and they had contracted all the stars, and they brought them all over into television. A TV station that associates with a network to play all of its program is called a repeater, a superstation, a syndicator, or an affiliate. What would be the term? Yes, wow, impressive. Everyone knows what an affiliate is for sure. So that's right. The affiliate makes a contract with the network to play all of its shows. And doing that is called clearance. Okay, so that's another term we should remember. Clearance means that an affiliate contracts to play network content. Okay? So remember the reason for that is the network wants to sell advertising across the United States. If you are an affiliate, I don't know, in some conservative state, and you say, "Whoa, we don't want to play that," trouble for the network, because then they can't sell advertising across the country, right? So it's very important that affiliates promise to do clearance on behalf of the network. Television made its first public debut when? In 1939 at the World's Fair, in 1926 at Macy's, after the Titanic sunk in 1912, or in 1945 when the atomic bomb was dropped. When did television come on the scene? Okay, great. It came on the scene at the 1939 World's Fair. We saw a video of film archives from that time. So that's when TV rolled out. Cable television originally started, to bring TV into remote areas where reception was bad, or as an experiment for two-way communications, or in hopes of competing with movie theaters, or as a joint venture with AT&T and local telephone companies. So which one of those is the most credible answer? And good. Again, the majority got it right. So the purpose of cable TV when it started, when it was called CATV, Community Antenna TV, to bring TV into remote areas where you couldn't get good reception usually. Nice. Okay, right. And yes. The Advanced Television Systems Committee adopted the broadcast standard used as HDTV. So We didn't review that, but that is true. So I jumped you, sorry. But we didn't even learn that one. So let me see here, just verifying that. I don't think that even made the cut this time into the test. Only saying it's true. No, that one is replaced. So with a question, we talked about what clearance means, right? That's when an affiliate contracts to play network content. There's a couple of C words, pardon the bad joke there, but there's another word called carriage and carriage rules, which you should know about. And this does affect cable TV. The carriage rules are that a cable television system must carry all of the local channels. So when Comcast comes to San Francisco, they must carry CBS, ABC, NBC affiliate stations from San Francisco. They can't go and make a contract with Santa Cruz affiliates and bring them up here because it'll be cheaper. Why did they make that rule? FCC made that rule because they wanted to make sure that as cable came into different cities, that the local affiliates in those cities weren't cut out of the cable network, you know. Because otherwise, if Comcast could, you know, they could just make a deal with any CBS station in the country and say, okay, give us your CBS programs and we'll put you on for less. But carriage rules means that they have to have the local affiliates on their system. That's carriage rules. Okay. Anyway, jump back to the Kahoot. Over the top, OTT, so we explained what that is, but let's see if you remember. Over the top, does that stand for taxation of satellite delivered television content, or setting used to limit excessive violence on home TVs, or is OTT streaming services that provide content directly to audiences, or is OTT involved in extending the prime time period by an hour per night? So which of those seems to be more like what we were talking about? Good, again, the majority got the answer. Streaming service, OTT services, or streaming services that provide content directly to audiences. So that would be, you know, Fire TV or Roku, or, you know, there are a number of different services that, you know, plug directly into your TV and give you those kinds of options. All right, way to go. We had a lot of good answers there. So let's head off. And what else do we want to talk about? So I'm just looking here. So we talked about what clearance is, carriage rules, which are, you know, cable company must carry local affiliates on cable system. All right? Some of these seem a little bit specific, huh? Shall we go jump back and play? Let's just check out, let's dip into Kahoot for chapter 2. What the heck, right? So I've challenged you, how do I play this? Maybe I'll just, let's play the classroom version then. Because I think I have to do that on with the app, right? So the classroom version, I would go here and go to chapter 2. Let's just go here, my Kahoots. Oh, I'm on that already. We're just practicing, but as I said, these questions are pretty close to questions that are on the exam. As you saw, there's a few that are, you know, I might have eliminated, and I'm trying to keep track of that. So we talked about carriage rules, that's important. We talked about what clearance is, so those two things are important. So this is a chapter 2 Kahoot. So this deals with the rise of radio from the early days all the way through to the success of FM. Do remember that there's also a lot of the information up here on these slides. Oh, this is a video, right? It's not a slide. Yeah, that's a good one to get back to in a sec. Right, so where were we? Back on Kahoots. Play. Let's start for chapter 2. So this is on the history of radio and, okay. Oh, we're back to the radio music box. All right, so that's good. I guess that one is certainly on the test, isn't it? So David Sarnoff's radio music box memo described a way to make money from broadcast radio. So well, we'll let you all answer that, but we did see that Sarnoff, who was the president of NBC, who was there from the early days of radio, was one of the people who thought, oh yeah, we could actually provide sort of content to every home by putting music out on our radio system. Because remember, originally they were thinking, well, should we use this for point-to-point communication and such? So we're going to skip ahead to that, but yep, everybody got that. That is true. Sarnoff wrote that radio music box memo. I think we could make a lot of money with radio if we send music into people's homes. You're right. You're still doing it. Still hanging on. Okay, question 2. Radio news was controversial. The press-radio war happened settled by the Biltmore Agreement. So, true or false? Was the Biltmore Agreement something that fixed the controversy over radio news? In the minority so the correct answer was true. So basically, as the history tells us, when radio came out, they were directly competing with newspapers as the mass media of the day. And newspapers invested a lot of money in gathering news. Newspapers, that was their point. And they were worried that radio would steal their audience by taking all their facts and broadcasting them on the radio. So they would not allow radio to use their news until they came to the Biltmore Agreement, which was where radio agreed not to broadcast the news until after the newspapers had sold their evening edition. So that was the deal which then opened the door to radio news, which of course nowadays, that's one of the central things we still use radio for, is to get news. So that was an early compromise between the newspapers and radio. So who invented FM radio? Was it Reginald Fessenden, Edward Howard Armstrong, Guglielmo Marconi, or Heinrich Hertz? And forget the ABCs, of course. So we're talking about FM radio. All right, that's excellent. Big majority notes that Howard Armstrong invented FM radio. And I just told his sad story again that FM was held back for decades until the 1960s, even though it had better sound and better quality. So that was Howard Armstrong. Okay, who proved that electromagnetic energy traveled through the air? Was it Fessenden, Hertz, Marconi, or Morse, the famous Morse code guy? I don't think it could be Morse. That's not a trick. Okay, well, again, I'm glad the majority got Heinrich Hertz. That's right. So he's a famous physicist whose experiment of the spark gap experiment proved the existence of electromagnetic energy fields around us, so that a spark in one part of the room will be reproduced in another part of the room if you've got the right kind of antenna setup. So that was the basis for knowing about radio waves, which are all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Lee DeForest, what did he invent? Was it the diode tube, the audion, the F valve, or all of the above? The F valve sounds a little bit ridiculous, so I don't think it's that or all of the above. The F valve. All right, as soon as we hit 8, I'll skip, because 9 never seems to come in. Not bad. So the majority got the answer right. Was the audion tube. Okay, the audion tube invented by DeForest. Okay, and we move on. Congress has the right to regulate broadcasting because, okay, Is it because American broadcasting system is a commercial enterprise? Is it because the airwaves belong to the people? Is it because early unregulated radio generated too much noise? Or could it be both A, the airwaves belong to the people, and C, early unregulated radio generated too much noise? So could that be the answer, both A and C? So yes, again, the majority shows the answer is A, the airwaves belong to the people. So that's your best answer. So the logic there was that just the way that the government has authority over the waterways or, you know, the national forests, things that people don't own as individuals but are collective goods for the country, they viewed the electromagnetic spectrum also as something that belongs to all Americans. And so the government has the, you know, justification because they act on behalf of all of us. Then they act to regulate the use of the airways, just like they regulate the use of the waterways around us. So that was their logic there. What we call today, what is that? What we today refer to as a network. What was that called in the 1920s? Ay, ay, ay. I'm going to head ahead. So, yep, that's good. The majority got chain broadcasting. So you could remember chain broadcasting if you visualize, you know, what happens when you have, for instance, CBS in New York City that then sends its signal to, you know, its own New York City, and then it's sent also to, you know, Los Angeles, it's sent to Chicago, etc. So it's a chain, and these are long distance telephone lines at this point. Now they're more likely to be satellite connections, but back in the day it was long distance telephone, which would carry the programming to each of these affiliate stations, basically. So they called that chain broadcasting because it was like a long chain connected by long distance telephone lines, high quality long distance lines of AT&T. Prior to the Radio Act of 1927, stations were encouraged to take turns broadcasting on frequencies. All radio stations broadcast on the same frequency, and legislation was inadequate to regulate commercial radio, which is really why they created the Radio Act, because it just wasn't working out at the time. Not surprising, that was a little mixed, but all of the above were correct in this case. Back in the day, until the Radio Act came in and started assigning frequencies to different broadcasters, basically they could all be on the same frequency. In the early days they said, well, you can take, you know, from 9 till 10, I'll take from 10 till 11, but none of that was adequate. They created the Radio Act, which licensed different broadcasters on particular frequencies, and then they were able to have a better radio business. Westinghouse was interested in broadcasting because it would allow them to sell more radio receivers, or allow them to make more revenue from advertising, or improve the moral climate of wholesome entertainment, or all of the above. But it wouldn't be all of the above because those are very different functions in the radio business. And in the early days, all the different companies in radio kind of divided it up. They say, okay, you guys will do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. So what did Westinghouse do? There we go. Okay, well, not that good, but Westinghouse's part of the business was to sell radio receivers. That's what they did. So make more revenue from advertising. Advertising would have been the network's business in this. So that would be NBC or CBS. But Westinghouse was a manufacturer of receivers. So that was their thing. Okay, why do I keep left clicking? 10, radio stations profited during World War II because advertisers bought radio ads instead of print. Is that true? Da-da-da-da-da-da. We'll do it. Yes, we got the majority there. True, radio stations did profit. There was a shortage of newsprint. The newspapers couldn't print enough, and so radio took over. A lot of advertising dollars went to radio because they could still have, they didn't need newsprint in order to make it work. All right. So that went well. Let's leave this one. And we're going to go do the chapter 1. And let's play it. So chapter 1, remember, had some general ideas about electronic media. So we were doing things like defining what mass media are, synchronous and asynchronous media, and various models that we looked at, which try to give us a diagram to think about mass media. So we asked who, while you're logging in, but just to other folks, while we asked who is considered the inventor of FM radio, but who, way back in the day when the system was AM radio, who demonstrated the first use of radio as a communications technology? Who's, and thereby came away as the person who we think invented radio as a whole in the 1912 or early 1900s. The Italian guy, remember his name? Marconi, that's right. So Marconi was the first person to get out on his yacht, for instance, in New York City and demonstrate how radio communications actually worked, versus Armstrong invented FM radio, which was a great system. But Marconi was, 20 years earlier, was the guy who put radio on the map, right? Okay, let's start on this one. Meanwhile, I'll make notes. There we go. So whose model of communication is known as the mathematical model? So the mathematical model was conceptually pretty simple. There was a sender, there was a receiver, there's a message that goes through a channel. So when we talk about model, that's what we're talking about. Those were, was it Marshall McLuhan, Shannon and Weaver, Schramm and Osgood, or just Schramm by himself? And yes, everybody got it correct. So the mathematical model was from Shannon and Weaver. They did this one. Okay, so that's probably our most common model. All right, good. Glad everyone got it. And we're moving on. Which is considered the nation's first mass medium? All right, so 8 people got newspapers, right? 1 people was thrown off by radio. So it's true, radio is our first electronic mass medium where, again, the model for mass medium would be sort of one point of origin, sends out the message to multiple receivers. But newspapers were doing that before electronic communication happened. So that would be the nation's first mass medium, newspapers. Okay. Convergence happens when different types of media become the same. Is that a true enough statement? Convergence, remember we talked about things coming together? Getting there? Yep, everybody got it right, so that is true. So convergence happens when on your phone, all different media come together. In the business world, every company buys up every other company, so they become like one massive company. Localism doesn't matter to radio stations anymore. True or false? Gotta move. Yes, the majority got false. That is correct, okay? Local radio is pretty challenged by all those music streaming services. But one thing that local radio can do that satellite radio or streaming services can't do is provide, information that is important to our local community, what's happening around us, or even music, created by people from our community. Local radio can do that. Radio can do that satellites don't. What do you call messages that are received almost instantaneously after transmission? Mediated, synchronous, asynchronous, or non-mediated? So let me give you some examples there. If we watch a live broadcast of a sporting event like a football game, you know, the football game is happening, and at the same time the audience is getting information about it. So synchronous, okay? So that's what we would call synchronous. That means that almost at the same time, there might be a second delay or something of the kickoff. People watching it on TV see it immediately afterwards. Asynchronous refers to, you know, streaming an episode of Friends 20 years after it was made or something like that. So asynchronous media is, you know, it is not consumed almost instantaneously after the event happens. There's like a long gap. So that means it's not synchronized. You're not seeing it at the same time it happens. What is probably the most revolutionary innovation since the printing press? If I come back to my example here on the timeline, we did, and I should full screen it for you. So this is way back to like one of our first lectures, but we did notice that you get to 1970 and boom, the number of innovations explodes compared to the whole history. What did happen around that date to change all of this, okay? And nope, I can't go to Finder, so I just got to get out of here. Let me give you your options again. Where is it? There it is. Oh, sorry, I ran out of time. What do you think it would be? The digitization of mediated content. So that's what changed everything. When you get into digital, you get into what they call Moore's Law, which is like every 2 years you have a doubling of capacity of power. You have, boom, the innovations just come, you know, right at you because of digitization. That is like the most revolutionary thing. Digital lets station offer multiple channels in their frequency. Is that true? I'm going to skip because I want to get to the next one. So it is true. So remember what we said, that with HD TV you can have, you used to have just channel 5. With HD TV you've got 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. You can get multiple channels on one frequency. In radio there's something called IBOC, in band on channel. That's digital radio, okay? And digital radio allows for the same thing. You can get several channels in the same band. 102.5 can have 3 different digital channels if you want. Which kind of an effect is it when we learn from the mass media? All right, so we're almost out of time. So we can, when we look at mass media and we get all angry and we want to go on the internet and rage, that's an emotional reaction. If we look at a commercial of a lovely pizza and we get hungry, that's a physical reaction. If we learn something from media, it's called a cognitive reaction. So if you learn something by watching a TV show, that is a cognitive reaction, right? And finally, which of the following statements is true? My goodness. The FCC, oh boy, let's just skip ahead, find the right answer. 1, it's all true, okay, that the FCC treats subscription media differently than broadcast. That means you can put on HBO what you can't put on CBS, because CBS, there's restrictions on content. The fairness doctrine is no longer in place, so that was the idea that if you had any political programming, you had to have all points of view, versus now you can get Rush Limbaugh just being a conservative all day long. The internet has full First Amendment protection. It does. Okay, so good luck. So you guys can play those Kahoots by, you know, getting the app on your phone and using that information, and you can see the information from all of the slides by running this video, okay? Good luck. So we'll do this test, you know, quiz 9:30 on Thursday. You can take it at home or you can be here to take it. Good luck.